Here is the real Bitcoin. Hey everybody, happy 4th of July, aka American Independence Day. We threw off the toque. No, we took a toque and threw off the tyrannical yoke of the British. Later on, British. So here I am in this. I can't say this is the only red, white, and blue t-shirt that I have, but it's the first one I found. And gosh, what could have been? How would Andrew Yang have dealt with the pandemic? We'll never know. So I'm going to share a piece of feedback that I received from Danny. Danny writes, "Hey KMO, loving your padverb output and glad to see your interviewing skill and ability to synthesize information earning you more recognition and cash." Well, not a whole lot more recognition and not a whole lot more cash, but some more. Danny continues, "Was hoping you might put these skills toward Peter Zeihan's new book. I know you have rejected the doomer narrative, but what do you make of Zeihan's predictions of broad civilizational collapse? I tend to think he's going a bit gleeful and over the top with his predictions, but it does seem like we are already manifesting more defensive and regional behavior in a very short span of time. Would love to hear a podcast on this topic if you are able. Also, thinking of how this change might drive crypto development in a world where trust in world trade declines." Okay, so two questions there. Riff on Peter Zeihan's doomerism, his seemingly newfound doomerism. I would say it's amped up doomerism, but I'm not going to answer the first part of the question at all. I did it in writing in this post on my Patreon page. It is not behind the paywall. You can read it for free. Check it out there. Link in the description. I'm going to talk about the second part. And actually, Danny writes also, thinking of how this change might drive crypto development in a world where trust in world trade declines. Trust and blockchain or trust and cryptocurrencies, it's a topic that's been on my mind. I've got a poll about that on the Padverb Podcast Telegram channel. Here's the poll. Here are the choices. I don't have it up on screen anywhere, so I can't read the choices to you. But basically, what do you think of this whole notion of trustlessness? The answers are, from memory anyway, yeah, trustlessness is the way to go. Trust is for sheep. Second one is, interesting idea maybe in the future, but right now we definitely need trusted institutions. I think the third choice was, what are you, stupid? Trust is essential to human civilization. It's what we're built on. After that, what were the others? One of which, the final answer in all my polls, at least on Telegram, where it gives you lots of potential answers, is, I don't know. I don't know. Always a respectable answer. One that people are unjustly afraid to give. You don't have to have an opinion on everything. But what I want to talk about in this episode of the podcast, after I answered Danny's first question about geopolitical stability and whatnot, and referencing Peter Zeihan's his worldview, I've read all of his books. I've been talking about his stuff and doing videos about his worldview for a couple of years now. So I'm really solid on at least the first two books, The Absent Superpower, or The Accidental Superpower and The Absent Superpower. Of the two, my favorite, of all of his books actually, my favorite is The Absent Superpower, What Happens to the Rest of the World When the US Packs Up and Goes Home. The next book, Disunited Nations, I had the audiobook. I think I listened to it all the way through maybe twice at most. Usually, if I get a meaty audiobook, I'll listen to it through once just to see if I like it. I'll listen to it a second time, trying to pick up the details. And then if I'm really into it, I'll either listen to it a third time or I'll go and get the Kindle version. I never got around to that. I mean, he's cranking out the books. I think Disunited Nations just came out last year. So I didn't really absorb it in as much detail as I did his first two books. And the most recent book, The End of the World is Just the Beginning, Mapping the Collapse of Globalization, I've listened to the audiobook through one time. So I'm not at all confident in trying to relay the points that he makes there. Other than that, yeah, he is more doomery than he has been in the past. I wasn't actually going to summarize any of this. This video is not about that. Go read my blog post for that. Bitcoin. Peter Zeihan describes Bitcoin as a dumpster fire. What's he talking about? Well, rather than me summarize, in the interest of fairness, Here is Peter ZEIHAN in his own words talking about Bitcoin.
Put the macroeconomic background for why Bitcoin is happening now. So the boomers right now are in the most liberal investment environment of their lives. They're the largest generation this world has ever had. So capital costs for the last couple of years are the lowest they've ever been. And in a couple of years, they're going to be very, very high because all that boomer liquid capital is going to go away. It'll be locked into T-bills and cash. Bitcoin is emerging in this environment when money is free. It's not going to be here in a couple of years. It's not a store of value. It's not a method of exchange. It is not readily shiftable into the real economy. We've discovered with the Russian sanctions that it is completely dependent upon the normal financial system for access. That means it's vulnerable to anything the government might do. It's already been banned in 10 of the top 20 economies in the world. And in terms of productivity, oh my God, to generate it, you're talking about something that if we ever get a carbon tax has a negative value. So yes, there's nothing about Bitcoin that's here for the long.
Okay, now here is me paraphrasing what you just heard. You can decide for yourself whether or not you think I'm giving Peter ZEIHAN a fair shake here. Now, keep in mind, I am generally positive toward his message. I buy all of his books. You know, I pay enough attention to them as I take them in to be able to reproduce just from memory, you know, extemporaneously a lot of his arguments. So I'm not a hostile voice here. I think he's wrong on crypto, and I think his arguments here on Bitcoin I can just easily demonstrate are they're motivated reasoning. They're in no way objective. Here's what I take him to be saying. Bitcoin is a thing right now because there's basically free money. You know, the federal funds rate has been at or near zero for a long time. The federal government was giving away lots of money. Basically, this was a time when there was lots and lots of money available to throw into all manner of investments, even the speculative high-risk ones, like cryptocurrencies. But now that the Fed is raising interest rates, now that the free money days are over, now that money is going to be harder to come by because, you know, the Fed and the federal government in general are looking to fight inflation, so they want to, you know, rein in the free money. Now Bitcoin is really screwed. It'll probably be gone in a couple of years, he said. Okay. Let's look at that. Let's look at some graphs. Okay, first up, Bitcoin didn't just emerge now. The first block was minted back in January of 2009. What we have here is the federal funds rate. This is, you know, when you hear about the Federal Reserve announcing a change in interest rates, this is what we're talking about. And here it is from 2015. So from 2015, it was pretty low. It went up. Now, compared to what it was, you know, 10, 15 years ago, this is still very low, but this 2.5%, highest it's been in recent years. And then came the pandemic and boom, it plummets. You know, the government is trying to stimulate the economy. They're giving away free money. You know, interest rates are very low, and they're really just literally giving away free money. First, just huge, huge giveaways to corporations, and then later, much smaller giveaways to people. Humans, I should say. Corporations are people. And then comes inflation. Oh, crap, what are we going to do? They're going to start, so they start raising interest rates. What was Bitcoin doing during that time? Well, here is a rough overlay of what Bitcoin did since 2015. So when the federal funds rate plummeted to zero, you can see shortly thereafter, Bitcoin hit a new all-time high. It just rocketed up. Fell down a bit, rocketed up to, this is the highest it's ever been, like $67,000. And then it's come down again. So this is just something I threw together in Photoshop. So, you know, maybe the timing that I have here isn't quite right. This isn't any sophisticated, you know, graphing software. This is just Photoshop. But look at this pattern. The green is the price of Bitcoin. See, there's this big plummet, which seems to overlap with the plummeting federal funds rate. So I thought, well, this is just something I threw together in Photoshop. Surely I'm not the only person in the world who's interested in this. Surely somebody has made a graph of these two trends. So here is a more precise graph, and check this out. This was green in the other one. But there is this period of overlap where there is this steep decline in the price of Bitcoin before it bounces back up again that totally overlaps with that steep decline in the federal funds rate. So just me eyeballing it in Photoshop got pretty darn close. So this graph, it doesn't show the collapse of Bitcoin, and it doesn't show the sudden rise of interest rates again, to fight inflation. So let's go back to Photoshop and look at my graph. So you can see the federal funds rate plummeted. This is the free money period, and Bitcoin went up. Then free money period ended, federal funds rate is going up, Bitcoin comes down. That's pretty impressive. That is a pretty impressive correlation. That speaks strongly, that is good support for Peter ZEIHAN's argument. But let's get rid of the last couple of years and just look at the correlation of Bitcoin to the federal funds rate before free money. Notice it goes way up here to almost, this is back in 2017, it goes almost up to $20,000 before it falls back down. And then, there's a lot of price action here. There's a lot going on here, and yet look at the federal funds rate. During the time when Bitcoin is going way up, coming back down, going back up again, the federal funds rate is just slowly increasing that whole time. There seems to be no correlation whatsoever between the federal funds rate and what's driving the price of Bitcoin. So really, I think all we can say about Peter ZEIHAN's observation about how Bitcoin, it came on the scene, what was his exact phrase? I mean, he basically implied that there was no Bitcoin before 2020, which is dumb. Obviously, it is a response to the 2008 financial crisis, first block minted in January of 2009. So it had a decade's worth of track record before COVID and before the economic and the government response to COVID. So yeah, that response drove it up into the stratosphere, but rather than saying, now that the free money period is over, Bitcoin is going to go away, it's not going to go away. It's just going to go back here to the pre-COVID era, where it goes up and down and up again. So the Bitcoin story is not over. It's just been reset to before the mad money phase. All right, is that the end of the story? I mean, is Peter ZEIHAN just wrong about Bitcoin? No, of course not. The future of Bitcoin is uncertain. The future of cryptocurrency is uncertain. The future of the human species is uncertain. Certainly, the future of industrial civilization is uncertain. But in the near term, the idea that Bitcoin is going to go to zero because of a rise in the federal funds rate, that's not even worth considering, really. So I have trouble believing that he believes his own argument on this. But I think that his paying customers are not the people who buys his books. His paying customers are the people who pay him a lot of money to fly around the world and stand up on stage and tell people with money and power that, look, we're in uncertain times. Things are going to change, not for the best for everybody, but for you, international set, whose fortunes are tied to the stability of the U.S. global empire and the U.S. dollar. Well, the empire is going away, but if you're one of our friends, it's still going to be good times for you. And the dollar, there is just no other national currency which has the volume or the trust to replace the U.S. dollar as the global reserve currency. There's just no, whatever problems you have with the dollar, there is no other national currency that is going to step up and take the dollar's place. That's Peter ZEIHAN's message. His audience wants to hear that. A lot of them also want to hear that, this challenge to the US dollar from Bitcoin is nothing to worry about. And you know what? I agree, it is nothing to worry about. The idea that the US dollar is in danger from Bitcoin, it just doesn't follow. Even if Bitcoin is widely adopted, even if it goes from being just this store of value to being a medium of exchange that is widely used, it still doesn't threaten the dollar. My phone never rings because I don't use this device as a telephone for the most part. I've gotten multiple calls, multiple people trying to call me as I've been trying to record this video. Anyway, there are lots of people who have unreasonable faith in the surefire success of Bitcoin or Ethereum or Cardano or their altcoin of choice. They are absolutely positively certain that after this little bump in the road, it's going to the moon and it's taking them with it, and they're going to be going to price Lambos, and the biggest, question they're going to have in their life is, Lime green or purple Lamborghini. No. That might happen, but if it does happen, it doesn't mean that your faith was justified or that your belief, was a rational belief. You just got lucky. The future is uncertain. Point blank. End of statement. Talk to you later. You can see him breathing. This is not a still photo. All right. There we go.